All right, good evening. My name is Captain Connor, and welcome to the awards. Before we get started, we have officers that are getting done at 7 p.m., and we want to have them have an opportunity to change it and get up here to receive their recognition. So in the meantime, for about 5 minutes or so, Lieutenant John Nettleton and some of the officers that are fresh back from the police unity tour, you probably saw some of the slides up here. They were taken over the just the last weekend. Officer Nettleton is going to speak for a few minutes about the police unity tour.
Good evening. In May of 1997, the police unity tour was organized with the hope of bringing public awareness of police officers who have died in the line of duty and to honor their sacrifices. What started with 18 riders on a fundraising bicycle ride from New Jersey to the National Law Enforcement Memorial in Washington, D.C. has grown into 9 chapters consisting of over 2,200 officers. Members range nationwide who make the trip annually. In May of 2015, Sergeant Phil Olivo was vacationing with his family in Wildwood, New Jersey, when the police unity tour passed by. Sergeant Olivo was so impressed with the display of unity. He quickly made the decision that this was something that members of the Pennsauken Police Department should be a part of, to honor the sacrifices of Officer Bray, Officer Bowman, and Officer Dalzer. Sergeant Olivo recruited me to participate in the police unity tour in May 2016. I can honestly say that this was one of the most rewarding experiences of both of our law enforcement careers. When we returned from our tour last year, we shared our experiences with everyone and anyone who would listen. As a result, interest within the Pennsauken Police Department has grown. This year, Team Pennsauken consisted of 8 members. The members included, please stand up when I say your name, Sergeant Phil Olivo, myself, retired Detective Sergeant Michael Basilio, Detective Brian Pulaski, Patrolman Vito Moles, Patrolman Michael Killian, Patrolman William Hertline, and Sergeant Frank Tarico for the Merchville Police Department. Thanks to the support of family and friends of Team Pennsauken, we were able to raise over $15,000. I would like to especially thank Patty Basilio, the wife of Sergeant Michael Basilio, for her time and effort to make sure our fundraisers were successful. The Police Unity Tour was proud to announce that a donation of $2.5 million was presented to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund this year. On Wednesday, May 10th, we left from Atlantic City, New Jersey, and rode over 200 miles and arrived in Washington, D.C. at the National Law Enforcement Memorial on Friday, May 12th. We proudly wore our Team Pennsauken shirts with the badge numbers of Officer Bray, Officer Bowman, and Officer Dawson. As we visited various memorials to honor the sacrifice of our fallen brothers and sisters, we displayed their badge numbers. Our hopes are that Team Pennsauken will continue to be a staple of the police unity tour for years to come. I'd also like to thank Captain Connor, who acquired a grant and acquired a support vehicle for us for this year, which once again has our fallen officers' badge numbers displayed on the side of the unity tour trailer. Thank you.
Like many of the officers in attendance tonight, I sought this career to be part of something larger than myself. Part of advancing in your career and in life is a change of perspective. When I hear people say now that they wouldn't want to be a cop today, or it's so hard to be in law enforcement today, I always respond that it was never that easy. Nobody that does this job knows the outcome of the next call in advance. Law enforcement can be described as a whole, made up of various parts. The definition of the word whole is complete and comprised of all elements belonging. We should keep that theme in mind tonight. I'm not only referring to the sections of the Pennsauken Police Department, patrol, detectives, traffic, etc., but of the residents who help us by engaging in the process of public safety, our elected officials, and as we'll see later, the efforts of officials in other agencies that swear an oath like us. 30 years ago, on this date, a day not unlike today, Officer William Bray answered a call of a disturbance. It went out as kids playing on a roof. It wasn't an armed robbery, it wasn't a domestic disturbance, but it was his final call nonetheless. The attack he sustained that day was vicious. The assailants intended to kill Bill Bray. He was mortally wounded early in the attack, but continued to fight. Nonetheless, he shot and killed one assailant and wounded another. Area residents came to his aid as backup arrived. We then did what we were trained to do. We arrested the killer of a brother officer and trusted the system. The Camden County Prosecutor's Office, and in particular, Sam Asbell and Dennis Wickstead, gave Officer Bray a voice and gave the rest of us justice. The awards tonight fall into several categories named in honor of our fallen brothers. In addition to Officer Bray, Officer George Bowman, whose final act before the end of his watch was to arrest a suspect after a high-speed pursuit, and Officer Dick Dawson, who sacrificed the quality of his life after sustaining critical injuries responding to a call for service. 3 names of sons of Pennsauken inscribed on the National Police Monument in Washington, D.C. All answered the call and did their duty. Now it's our responsibility to make sure their memory lives on. Without further delay, we proceed to the award portion of tonight. Julius Davis. Julius Davis, on August 29, 2016, you were outside of a business in the 3000 block of Marlton Pike when you heard a female in distress. You also observed a male exit the business on foot. You spoke with the female and determined that an armed robbery had just occurred and the male on foot was the suspect. You then followed the vehicle the suspect fled the scene in your personal vehicle. While you were following the suspect, he fired shots at you and your vehicle. You were not struck, but your vehicle sustained damage. You were ultimately able to provide a description of the suspects and a description of the vehicle, including the license plate. The information that you provided led to the recovery of the vehicle, the arrest of the suspects, and the arrest of an accomplice who drove the vehicle during the getaway. Your actions go above and beyond civilians' duty to assist the police. Your initiative and help were greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. Michael Zambrana, Jr. On February 16, 2017, when you arrived home from school, you noticed that the rear door of your residence was open and you observed an unknown male in your kitchen. Upon realizing that you had walked in during an active burglary to your residence, you remained undetected and crawled on your hands and knees to your dog, Sasha, who was contained in her cage. The cage was in close proximity to the kitchen where the burglar was located. You then released Sasha from the cage and yelled at the burglar to get out. You and Sasha then chased the burglar out of the house, during which time the dog grabbed a hold of the burglar's right arm. The burglar broke loose of Sasha's grip while fleeing the area on foot, but you were able to provide a description of the actor that was used during the investigation of your burglary. Your actions go above and beyond the civilian's duty to assist police. Okay, we're going to start the awards that are named in honor of our fallen brother officers. The Officer Richard Dawson Award for Outstanding Performance of Duty is awarded annually to an officer who demonstrates exemplary performance of duty that goes above and beyond what might suffice in the efforts to result in arrest, the seizure of contraband, or other actions that bring credit to the Pennsauken Police Department, and earns the respect of his or her peers. The said award for the calendar year of 2016-17 is awarded to Officer Raymond Kern. On September 25, 2016, at approximately 9:42 hours, you were on patrol and observed a vehicle at 48th and Westfield. You were able to recognize that the front seat passenger was a wanted person for attempted homicide. The subject was charged with numerous offenses ranging from attempted homicide to possession of a handgun. You effected a motor vehicle stop on Westfield at 48th Street, and you were able to safely apprehend the subject without incident. You used great observations and tactics and were able to arrest the violent offender within 2 days of a warrant being issued. You're commended for your outstanding performance in duty. The next several awards are all going to be basically under that same heading of the Richard Lawson. Patrolman Mike Kelly. Patrolman Mike Piazza. Patrolman Jeffrey Donato. On January 12, 2017, Officers Donato, Piazza, and Killian responded to a residence on Gladwin Avenue for a male not breathing, lying on the floor of the residence. Once on location, it was confirmed that the male was not breathing and had no pulse at all. The male suffered from a rare disease and was in need of immediate life-saving techniques. The three officers took action and initiated CPR. These three officers rotated giving the CPR until medics arrived and could provide more advanced care. As a result of the actions of these officers and the emergency medical personnel that responded, the male regained a pulse and began to breathe on his own while en route to the hospital. You're commended for your actions that day. Officer Ryan Hurley. Okay, on June 16, 2016, at approximately 2:54 hours, you responded to Cherry Hill 7-Eleven, Haddonfield Road in Maple Avenue, to assist in an armed robbery call. It was reported that two males with handguns robbed a convenience store. After several minutes of searching the area with negative results, it occurred to you to have Central Communications check with local taxi services to see if any fares had recently been picked up in the area. Dispatch reported that a five-star cab had just picked up two males from 4322 Willis Avenue, which is in close proximity to the robbed business. The cab was then en route to Gloucester City. This location was only several blocks from where the robbery occurred. Central continued to update Pennsauken assisting units as to the cab's location and unit number. Pennsauken police conducted a felony car stop at Route 130 in Frosthopper, and the two male passengers in the cab were subsequently arrested with the proceeds of the armed robbery. You're hereby commended for your outstanding performance. Officer Jody Pasquale. Officer Jody Pasquale. On June 16, 2016, at about 7:30 in the evening, you initiated a motor vehicle stop at Kane and North Park for a seatbelt violation. While speaking with the driver, you detected an odor of raw marijuana emanating from the interior of the vehicle. Based on your observations, you removed the occupants and performed a search of the interior and uncovered burnt marijuana as well as 127 bags of heroin packaged for distribution. You arrested all three occupants, seized over $1,700 in currency. Your keen observations and thorough investigation transformed a minor seatbelt violation into the seizure of nearly 2 ounces of heroin. Officer Eric Coupler and Ryan Hurley. On February 5th, 2017, at about 5 o'clock in the morning, Officer Coupler and Officer Hurley responded to the area of 6951 North Park Drive with a report of a vehicle stopped in the roadway with an unconscious driver. Upon their arrival, they located the vehicle on the road with both the driver and passenger asleep. They determined the driver showed signs of impairment and had him exit. As the driver exited, they immediately observed that he had a loaded handgun protruding from the left front pant pocket. They were able to control the suspect, recover the gun, and place him under arrest without further incident. They acted calm and professional and were able to quickly control what could have escalated into an extremely dangerous situation. Officer Biazzo, Officer Morales, and Officer Bolts. Tease Officer Morales, we think that maybe you should be on the department for a minimum amount of time before you're eligible for awards. He's the newest among us. On January 31st, 2017, at approximately 11:14 hours, Officer Moltz and Officer Morales stopped the vehicle on the Federal Street ramp for tinted windows. During the vehicle stop, the officers detected burnt marijuana coming from the vehicle. The occupants were told to lower the windows so the officers could see inside. The front seat passenger was not compliant during the stop and refused to follow their commands. The officer waited for backup. Officer Biazzo then began the process of having the occupants exit the vehicle so the source of the odor could be located. Officer Moltz was on the driver's side and Officer Morales on the front passenger. As the passenger started to exit, he immediately tried to get back into the vehicle and was grabbing something from the center console. Moltz could see the male had put something in his hands and alerted Morales and Officer Biazzo. Morales and Biazzo then physically struggled with the male to keep his arms restrained in the case he was now armed. Officer Morales and Biazzo were able to get the subject on the ground and place him under arrest, and the male was found to have 44 bags of crack in his hand when he was arrested. In addition to distribution of crack cocaine, the officers located marijuana inside the vehicle. You're hereby commended for your outstanding performance. On Saturday, June 21st, 2017, Patrolman Moltz conducted a motor vehicle stop in the area of the Federal Street ramp and detected the odor of marijuana coming from the vehicle. Moltz removed the occupant from the vehicle and searched for the source. Moltz observed a suspicious bulge inside the left pant leg of one of the occupants, and he conducted a protective search and recognized during that search the object was a handgun. Moltz secured the male in handcuffs and recovered a Smith & Wesson .40 caliber loaded with hollow points. A further investigation revealed that the handgun was reported stolen out of South Dakota. Officer Rivera, Figueroa, and Gilbert. Okay, these three officers on November 11, 2016 at 7:14 hours were dispatched to the 3000 block of Harris Avenue for the report of two males in a vehicle armed with a handgun. When the officers arrived at the location, the passenger attempted to exit. The caller had updated police that the passenger was in possession of the handgun. Officers were forced to draw their weapons in order to get males out of the vehicle. The passenger got out of the vehicle and was placed on the ground. The officer still needed to cover the other occupant while approaching the passenger. As the officers approached the male, they discovered he was armed with a loaded silver handgun. The suspect was safely apprehended and the handgun was taken off the streets. You're hereby commended for your outstanding performance of duty. Officer Gilbert and Sergeant Salzbeck.
Oh, yeah.
On May 5th, 2016, at 7 o'clock in the morning, Officer Gilbert and Sergeant Salzbeck responded to the Camden County Technical School for a possible abduction of a student. Upon arrival, the only information provided was that the male was assaulted and forced into a tan vehicle. The identity of the victim or the defendant was unknown to the officers when they arrived. A witness was able to provide a New Jersey registration, and that's all the officers had to initiate their investigation. After tracking down various leads, the actors were finally able to be identified. Dispatch was able to provide a possible address in Camden City, where they immediately responded. Upon your arrival, the vehicle involved was on location and the victim was located inside. The suspect was arrested and charged with aggravated assault and endangering the welfare of a child. Their quick response and thorough investigation resulted in the expedited apprehension of a violent criminal and the safety and return of that student. You're commended for your actions. Officer Piazza, Officer James Schenberger, Officer Chris Jones, Sergeant Phil Olivo, and Lieutenant John Nettleton. On June 17, 2016, at about 10:30 in the morning, you responded to the 7700 block of Patterson Lane for an active fight inside a residence. When officers arrived on location, it was determined that the incident was actually an active home invasion robbery. When officers arrived, the actors began to flee the residence. One of the actors fled the back and officers gave chase. The suspect tried entering the vehicle to escape custody. When confronted by officers on the scene, the actor began to physically resist arrest. They were able to arrest the male while not knowing that he was armed with a weapon. During the robbery, there was a knife used to assault the homeowner, and the resident suffered a concussion and broken nose from the actors. Ultimately, 3 individuals were charged from this robbery incident. You're commended for your actions. Officer Joey Pasquale, Officer Mike Delp, and Officer Ryan Hurley, and Detective Matt Henkel. Detective Matt Henkel, Officer Delp, Officer Pasquale, and Officer Hurley. On May 23, 2016, You were dispatched on the 1900 block of 42nd Street for the report of an armed robbery. Upon arrival, 2 victims reported they were robbed at gunpoint by 2 males. The victims further reported that they were both pistol whipped during the course of the robbery. Officers tracked the location of the suspects to Camden City, at which time both suspects and the suspect vehicle were located. Both suspects were apprehended without incident. A handgun used in the robbery was located during a search of the vehicle, and the investigation revealed that a 3rd individual was involved in the robbery. That individual was arrested and charged appropriately. You're commended for your outstanding performance of duty. Detective Sergeant Olivo, Brian Pulaski, Paul McCausland, Erica Long, and Sergeant Brewer. On November 16, 2016, the Pennsauken Police Department Detective Division executed a narcotics search warrant in the 5500 block of Wayne Avenue. The warrant was the culmination of a long-term narcotics investigation. During the execution of the warrant, 5.5 pounds of heroin, under 50 grams of marijuana, and nearly $2,000, assorted electronics, and a 2000 Ford F-150 were seized. The target of the investigation was arrested on the scene and charged with first-degree distribution of heroin, along with other related drug charges. You are hereby commended for your outstanding performance of duty. And I should just mention, it's not like TV. These guys can work a week sometimes, 4 or 5 days to get a search warrant approved by a judge. So this was a great job. Officers Pennington and Belcito. On March 27, 2017, Officers Belcito and Pennington observed a vehicle with an expired New Jersey temporary tag and a brake light out at Kane and North Park Drive. They conducted a motor vehicle stop, and upon approaching the vehicle, the officers detected the odor of raw marijuana coming from inside the vehicle. They conducted a search for the source of the odor and revealed half an ounce of crack cocaine and 9.3 ounces of marijuana, as well as small bags in the scale. $600 of currency was also found in the occupants, which was then seized. The marijuana was packaged for distribution in 40 separate containers. There were 2 bags of marijuana that had not yet been packaged. The crack was separated into 20 vials for distribution, and 3 occupants were charged with constructive possession. By looking beyond the simple motor vehicle violation, these officers were able to effect an arrest for distribution of narcotics. Officer Nicole Foley. On June 23, 2016, just before 1 o'clock in the morning, we responded to a residence on Avignon Way for the odor of CDS coming from an apartment. That's controlled dangerous substance. The address has had several similar complaints in the past. When you arrived, you observed the male enter the residence in question. When you went to the door, you detected a strong odor of marijuana, and despite the residence being on the second floor of the building, you knocked and were greeted by a resident who ultimately allowed you to enter the residence upon your request. As you entered the residence, you observed marijuana and packaging material in the apartment. You were able to convince the resident to sign a consent search based off your observations. Your search located over 4 ounces of marijuana, 2 grams of synthetic marijuana, and 13 grams of another synthetic marijuana. Packaging material for street-level CDS distribution, assorted CDS paraphernalia, and $700 in U.S. currency were also seized. Your keen investigative skills and great interpersonal skills while speaking with the resident culminated in the seizure and arrest. You're hereby commended. Officer, can I get there? On July 4th, 2016, again, around 1 o'clock in the morning, Officer Kulik and K-9 Officer Adair responded to the 2200 block of Cove Road for the report of an active burglary to vehicles in the area. This type of crime has risen throughout the state and comes with difficulty in locating the actor due to the quick nature of the act. A description of the possible suspect was provided to officers, and Officer Kulik began searching the area. At the same time, Officer Adair and his K-9 partner Maverick began a track of the actor. Kulik located a male matching the description on Westfield Avenue. The male observed Officer Kulik and walked across the street toward the 7-Eleven to avoid apprehension. Kulik then stopped the male and detained him. Officer Adair and K-9 Maverick had already begun to track from the crime scene and were heading towards that location. Officer Kulik and the suspect, K-9 Maverick, tracked directly to the 7-Eleven and took the same path as the actor. The actor was positively identified, and the victim was placed under arrest for burglary. Officer Ramos and Officer Joe Hurley. Okay, the Officer Richard Dawson Award for Outstanding Performance at Duty. On July 9, 2016, 1 o'clock in the morning, Officers Ramos and K-9 Officer Hurley responded to the 4200 block of Remington Ave with a report of an active burglary. The actor had broken into a home in Remington and had entered the bedroom of a juvenile during the course of the burglary. When the juvenile saw the burglar, the scream caused the suspect to flee the residence. A description was provided, and Officer Ramos began to search the area. At the same time, Officer Hurley and his K-9 partner, Chris, went to the home to begin a track of the actor. Ramos located a male matching the description in Amon and 43rd. The male had a backpack and was out of breath. As Officer Ramos stopped his suspect, Officer Hurley and his K-9 partner were tracking from the residence and went directly to the location where Officer Ramos had stopped the actor. The actor was positively identified and was placed under arrest. The combined effort of the officers involved provided the evidence needed to charge a criminal whose actions put the safety of residents at great risk. Nicole, Officer Ford, come back up. On October 27, 2016, at 0:56 hours, you responded to precision transmission for the report of a burglary to vehicles in a parking lot. A Upon arrival, you determined several vehicles had their windows broken and had been burglarized. You reviewed the surveillance video and were able to positively identify the suspect in the burglary from an earlier encounter during your shift. You were aware that the suspect was staying at the Hallmark Motel in Cinnaminson, and a warrant for burglary was issued for the suspect. You were then able to locate the suspect at the Hallmark and place him under arrest without incident. Due to your determination, the suspect was apprehended. Detective Brian Pulaski. On October 7, 2016, you executed a narcotic search warrant in the 3700 block of Union Avenue in Pennsauken. The search warrant was the culmination of a multiple-month investigation of a narcotic distributor. During the search of the residence, 1 pound and 5 ounces of marijuana, numerous amount of paraphernalia, 133 clear capsules commonly used to manufacture Molly, scales, packaging material, and $1,000 in United States paper currency were recovered from the residence. Lieutenant Nettleton. On March 7, 2017, you responded to a residence in the 5700 block of Rogers Avenue for a male suffering from cancer who had made suicidal threats. Upon police arrival, the male had already barricaded himself inside the room and told officers that he was armed with weapons. The male had stated that he was a veteran of the U.S. Marine Corps. As the watch commander, you responded immediately, took control of the scene. You made entry into the residence and began to speak to the male through the bedroom door. During your conversation with that male, you determined he was depressed over his bout with cancer and had possibly ingested a large quantity of pills. Through your concern and sympathetic approach to his state of mind, you were able to de-escalate a very dangerous situation and eventually have the male surrender to police for treatment and evaluation. Your actions, professionalism, and caring toward the residents of Pennsauken helped to bring this incident to a safe resolution. Officer Sexton, Mike Pennington, Officer Soto, and Mike Duff. On September 11, 2016, at approximately 2 o'clock in the morning, Officer Soto observed 2 suspicious males exiting the side of the Burger King restaurant at 4801 Route 130 North. Soto immediately radioed for additional units to respond and broadcast that there were 2 males that fled on bikes. Officer Soto quickly determined that an armed robbery had just occurred inside the business, the proceeds being $2,500 in cash and 2 cell phones. The suspects used a double-barreled handgun during the robbery, and this same handgun was possibly linked to several other armed robberies that prior week. Officer Pennington began looking for the suspects and observed the 2 males on bicycles in the area of 34th and High in Camden City. When he attempted to stop the vehicles, they both fled. Officer Pennington was able to track one of the males to Baldwin Run in Camden City. The suspect was hiding and later initiated a foot pursuit with Officer Pennington when he approached. Officer Delp and Sexton located the suspect fleeing from Pennington and were able to apprehend him. The suspect was wearing a GPS ankle bracelet, which was then able to place him at the scene of the crime. The officers never gave up their pursuit, even with the knowledge that the suspects were armed and dangerous. You're hereby commended for your outstanding work. Officer Sulzback, I'm sorry, Sergeant Sulzback, Officer Kern, Officer Mold. On December 31st, 2016, New Year's Eve, at approximately 9:47 p.m., these officers were tasked with investigating a fatal motorcycle crash that occurred on Route 73. The driver of the vehicle that struck the motorcyclist was found to be driving while intoxicated. Once the driver was determined to be under the influence, the investigation became criminal in nature. It was the duty of these officers to bring justice, not only for the victim, but also for his family. Under the supervision of Sergeant Sulzback, Officer Moles and Officer Kern worked tenaciously to complete the investigation in an objective, thorough, and technical manner. The investigation had several aggravating factors that needed to be proven, and with their keen investigative skills, they were able to determine evidence to satisfy the necessary elements for a first-degree vehicular homicide charge. Those officers showed professionalism and proficiency throughout the investigation, and hopefully they helped the family of the victim find some peace after the suffering and tragic loss. Detective Pulaski and Detective Causey. On September 22nd, 2016, police responded to the 2300 block at Gross Avenue for the report of a shooting. A crime scene was located in the 2300 block of Gross. The victim arrived at Cooper Hospital with a gunshot wound shortly thereafter. Through your investigative efforts, a suspect and a motive were developed within 48 hours. The suspect was charged with criminal intent murder as well as weapons charges, and the suspect was apprehended a short time later without incident. You are hereby commended for your outstanding performance and duty. Officer Bullock and Officer Ramos. To my left stands Chief Coffey, in whose honor this award for leadership was conceived. It's awarded annually to the officer who provides an outstanding example to his or her peers in overall performance and community service. Criteria for the award include overall service record and job performance, activity in the community as a volunteer, dedication to education and physical fitness, and a willingness to provide leadership by example. The recipients for 2016 and 2017, the co-recipients are Officer Nicole Bullock and Officer Nanette Ramos. Officer Bullock and Officer Ramos have been selected for their professionalism and compassion when dealing with the public while being empathetic to the needs of those in the community they serve. They are dedicated to physical fitness and have participated in many charity running events that benefit the community. They both strive for excellence and are always seeking to improve their knowledge and performance. A specific example of Officer Kulik and Officer Ramos' dedication to the community and to individuals they were sworn to serve comes from the tragic loss of a young child within the township border. On August 20th, 2016, Pennsauken Township lost a 3-year-old boy named Jamil. Jamil was the victim of an unspeakable act by a person close to him. As a result of the heinous crime, he lost his life. Both Officer Ramos and Officer Kulik were instrumental in the attempt to save his life, as well as the facts that led to charges in the case. Their actions that evening were not enough for them, and they wanted to do more. The officers bought presents for Jamil's siblings, and they attended the vigil for Jamil to pay their respects to his family. This incident had a profound impact on these officers, and they will never forget the loss and suffering of Jamil's family and the community as a whole. Our next award is named in honor of Officer George Bowman. To my left is George Bowman's baby boy, Trooper, New Jersey State Trooper Jeff Bowman. He is a member of the Officer George T. Bowman Award for Dedication and Professionalism is given annually to an officer who best exemplifies the dedication and professionalism demonstrated by Officer Bowman throughout his life and career. The recipient must demonstrate loyalty to the police department, have the respect of his or her peers, supervisors, and community. For the calendar year of 2016-2017, the award is hereby given very appropriately to Sergeant Chris Sullivan. Sergeant Solzbach has served the residents of Pennsauken Township as a police officer for 25 years. He has been a sergeant for the past 16, and he is presently assigned as the head of the traffic division. Sergeant Solzbach is in charge of the traffic unit that has been used as a model to other agencies for its effective traffic enforcement strategies and intricate crash investigations. Sergeant Solzbach is dedicated to Pennsauken Township and the police department, the administration of the agency, and the officers who work under his command. Sergeant Solzbach's main focus is making the community safer with a strong emphasis on DWI enforcement and traffic education. Sergeant Solzbach has been praised by the members of the community for their positive interaction with him and assistance he provides on a daily basis. His work ethic, dedication, and loyalty to the police department have earned him the respect of his peers, supervisors, and his subordinates, as well as the community. Well deserved. George Bowman, Jeffrey's father, was a past president of the Fraternal Order of Police and was very highly thought of throughout the state in Fraternal Order of Police matters. And he's still a giant figure in the police department, still casts quite a shadow. This is a little bit different. Tonight we're going to do something that has not been done. As I mentioned earlier, there are 30 years have passed since Officer Bray was killed in the line of duty. And it struck us that we should do something to honor people that outside the police department that helped us in our time of need. So we would like to specially recognize two men who I've known for 33 years. Both giants in their field. Former Camden County Prosecutor Sam Aswell, please come up. And former First Person Prosecutor Dennis Whitman. I'd like to take a moment to introduce our mayor, Betsy McBride.
You might have heard me say that I'm Pennsauken proud, but tonight I'm especially Pennsauken police proud. So, as we all know, I lost Officer Bray 30 years ago, and after the officers had done the appropriate investigation and arrest, it was up to the prosecutor's office to make sure justice was done. And so, in keeping the tradition of Pennsauken, I'm going to read a proclamation, and I am going to shorten it a little bit because these guys have a long history of service to our county. Whereas on May 15, 1987, this is in honor of San Francisco, a horrific tragedy occurred that would change the community of Pennsauken forever. The life of Patrolman William Bray was callously taken in the line of duty. The first officer to give his life in the line of duty in the history of the Pennsauken Police Department up until that time. The loss of Patrolman Bray had a profound effect. Today, on the 30th anniversary of this fateful day, we join together to thank the undeterred efforts of Sam Asbell for his contributions to bringing justice to Patrolman Bray's memory. And whereas Samuel Asbell was a revered member of the Camden County Prosecutor's Office, serving as prosecutor from December 1984 until January 1990, a graduate of Dickinson and Seton Hall, Mr. Asbell has always demonstrated fervor toward his job. He's been a member of the Camden County Bar Association, serving in several positions within the organization, and continues to help educate the legal community through lectures on municipal court and criminal matters. Whereas Martin Luther King said, quote, "Every step toward the goal of justice requires sacrifice, suffering, and struggle. The tireless exertions and passionate concern of dedicated individuals." Sam Asbell embodied this notion completely with his perseverance and commitment to the details of handling the circumstances surrounding this case. The success in prosecuting the case on behalf of the life of Patrolman Bray was contingent upon many factors, but primarily the response of the Camden County Prosecutor's Office made all the difference. Mr. Asbell's fastidiousness and determination in presenting a compelling case ultimately resulted in justice, not only for Patrolman Bray, but his family, colleagues, and the community who mourned him. Now, therefore, Betsy McBride, Mayor of Pennsauken, along with the members of Township Committee, hereby honor Samuel Asbell for his respective role in bringing justice in this case. As we reflect on 30 years since that tragic day and the indelible print it has left on our community, we're so grateful that righteousness triumphed over all, thanks to Samuel Asbell. We thank you for coming. I hope that wasn't too long. This one's in honor of Dennis Wickstead. Same paragraph to begin. So, whereas Dennis Wickstead graduated from the South College and his law degree from Rutgers Law School, subsequent to a judicial clerkship, Mr. Wickstead began a 16-year career as an assistant prosecutor with the Camden County Prosecutor's Office. It was in this role that Dennis would truly make a difference. As part of the homicide unit, organized crime unit, and first assistant prosecutor, Dennis Wickstead would help bring justice to those in need. Whereas it has been said, the deed cannot cry out for justice, it is the duty of the living to do that for them. The success in prosecuting the case on behalf of the life of Patrolman Bray was contingent upon many factors, but primarily the response of the prosecutor's office. As the individual responsible for actually presenting the case, Mr. Mr. Weeks has produced a compelling reconstruction of the crime scene and gave the courtroom a realistic account of the events of the crime. His efforts and attention to detail ultimately resulted in justice, not only for Patrolman Ray, his family, colleagues, and the community who mourned him. Now therefore, I, Betsy McBride, Mayor of Pennsauken, along with the members of Township Committee, hereby honor Dennis Wickstead for your respective role in bringing justice in this case. We are so grateful that righteousness triumphed, thanks in large part to your efforts, and thank you for your job.
Since this William Gray award was conceived, the only person that was not a Pennsauken police officer at the time to receive this award was Officer Bowman. Officer Bowman was the first recipient of this award posthumously. We now feel so strongly in our gratitude to your office and for your efforts, Dennis. And I should also say, these two guys were the tip of the spear, so to speak. Obviously, there was an awful lot of other people involved in this, support people and other lawyers, and I would be remiss not to mention that. But it's important to us, it's so important to us, that we would like to bestow upon you, honorarily, the William Gray Award for Valor. On May 15th, 1987, Officer William Gray was killed with a line of duty. The Pennsauken Police Department sought justice for its loss and turned to the office of the Camden County Prosecutor to give our fallen brother a voice. Samuel Asbell, as the county prosecutor, and Dennis Wickstead, as the first assistant prosecutor, ensured that although his watch had ended, Officer Gray received the justice he deserved. The men and women of the Pennsauken Police Department express our gratitude and respect by bestowing this honorary award to Sam Asbell and Dennis Wickstead on the 30th anniversary of Patrolman Gray's death. You are commended for your outstanding performance. Officer Rosner and Officer Bevins. Sergeant Bevins. On March 20th, 2017, at about 9 p.m., Officer Rosner and Sergeant Bevins and other officers responded to the 7400 block of Walnut Avenue for the report of two males fighting. The caller had reported that one of the males had been smoking PCP. Rosner was first to arrive on the scene and reported that the males were actively fighting. Rosner then reported that one of the males was in possession of a knife. There were numerous people inside the residence beside the two people fighting. It was, suffice to say, it was a very chaotic scene. Rosner acted decisively and entered the residence alone, knowing that the occupants were in danger. Rosner gave numerous commands for the armed male to drop the knife. He refused and continued to struggle and advance. At the same time, the male's brother and sister were fighting with him, trying to disarm him. Rosner, fearing for the family's safety, deployed his conductive energy device, which is known as a taser. This worked temporarily. However, immediately after the exposure, he continued to fight. During the fight, the male's sister suffered a stab wound in her left leg. Rosner was able to use voice command and several taser deployments to control the situation until assisting officers arrived. Upon Sergeant Bevins' arrival, the male was behind a couch and making his way toward the kitchen. Rosner deployed his taser again. Bevins jumped on the male to control him. Bevins had no knowledge at that time as to whether or not he was still armed, and his action to protect those on the scene controlled him. Patrolman Rosner and Sergeant Bevins' brave actions and quick thinking kept the incident from turning into a deadly force situation. You are hereby commended for your outstanding service. Officer Brian May, Lynette Ramos, Brandon Miller, Officer William Hurtline, Officer Louis Belcito, Jody Pasquale, Ryan Hurley, Joseph Hurley, and Peter Fabiani. Officer Carey, Officer Cutler, and Officer Torres. Okay, all these awards, as you can see, this probably represents everybody working on that given night. This is the Officer William Gray Award for Valor. On November 13, 2016, at about 2 o'clock in the morning, Pennsauken police responded to the Regal Banquet Hall on Route 73 for an active fight in the parking lot. While officers were on location, attending to groups of individuals fighting in the south parking lot, there was an incident developing in the north parking lot. At approximately 2:15, there was in excess of 20 gunshots fired in the north parking lot. With little regard for their own personal safety, officers went directly toward the gunfire to check for victims and engage an armed suspect. As officers made their way into the crowd, there was no clear indication of where the armed subject was located, and still the officers moved forward. They found a male with multiple gunshot wounds lying between two vehicles and another male with a single gunshot wound staggering away from the scene of the shooting. Immediately, they took action to provide a safe area of medical attention, while other officers provided emergency aid. The incident then developed into a chaotic crowd control scene, and the officers stood brave while encountering the hostile crowd. Eventually, with the help of a multi-jurisdictional response, the scene was able to be brought under control, and the victims were transported to the hospital where, tragically, one of the males died as a result of his wounds. All officers working that morning did everything in their power to save the victim's life with little regard for their own safety and the dangers they encountered. They were under the command that led Lieutenant James Hartman. You're hereby commended to your office. I saw the surveillance video of this job a few days after it happened. It should be noted that two of the officers ran directly past the car that the shooter had gotten into. At the time, they had no way of knowing it. But had the officer stopped that car, had they decided to shoot it out at that point, it could have been a very different outcome. Okay, our final award tonight is kind of a big deal. And the reason I say that is because the Officer of the Year, as dictated by our policy, requires that all supervisors provide the names of 3 officers under their command that they think are worthy of being considered for Officer of the Year. So when those ballots, those memos come to me, I tabulate them, and the top 3 vote getters are then placed on a ballot and given back to the rank and file, so that the officers that are sitting here can vote for who they think is the Officer of the Year. That's why it's kind of a big deal to be chosen by your peers as special. The recipient for 2017 is Detective Brian Pulaski. Brian had an MVP year last year, there's no doubt about it. Everything he did was good. The Pennsauken Police Officer of the Year is given annually to the police officer whose performance, dedication to his profession, and character serve as an example to fellow officers, and it tends to bring credit to the Pennsauken Police Department. The 2017 Pennsauken Police Officer of the Year is Detective Brian Pulaski in recognition of his high level of proactive police service, compassion for the community, and overall police professionalism as voted by his fellow officers. You are hereby commended for your outstanding performance. As a side note, I don't think there's anybody in uniform that gave a detective a chance of winning that. But Brian is so highly thought of that even the officers in patrol had to acknowledge what a good job he does. And that concludes the awards, Chief. Next remarks.
Good evening. Good evening. I'll be very brief. As Captain Connor indicated earlier, we've been doing this for over 40 years. Started in Cooper River, been in our court, other locations. This is the first time we've ever used the high school auditorium for these awards. I want to thank you once again for coming out. This shows all the support we need for our officers. 2 observations I'd like to make. This was the most amount of awards I've ever seen given out in one night in the 38 years I've been here. Now that's telling me something, because it's the same criteria every year. The other thing is, when these awards were given as a result of activity, mostly in 2016, it was the busiest year we ever had for calls for service. These officers here answered over 100,000 calls last year. One of the busiest police departments in Camden County. So it looks at this point, we're going to continue to be busy. There's going to be a lot more awards, and hopefully everybody stays safe and nobody wearing a blue uniform gets hurt in the future. Like I said, it's ironic that this is the 30th anniversary of the death of Billy Bragg. There was only 4 of us on the department at that time. None of the 4 of us happened to be working on that evening. But all of us, once we got the word, responded to the scene. So I congratulate all the officers. There's a lot of other officers day in, day out, do their jobs the best they can, and we probably could have given even more awards. But once again, congratulations, everybody. Thank you.
As we conclude tonight, I would like to bring your attention to a poem. It's located in your handout. It was written by a Pennsauken resident, Diane Yates, who's in attendance tonight. Ms. Yates, please stand up. Ms. Yates was able to compose this poem, and it was dedicated to Sergeant Solzbach's effort in helping her to resolve a problem near her in her neighborhood. I would ask that you take a moment to read this. This is why we do what we do. Thank you for your attention tonight. If I could have the Pennsauken officers stand by for a minute, there's a few things we have to take care of. Thank you for your attention. And again, big round of applause to the guys receiving the award. Refreshments that are in the lobby, and feel free to have pictures taken.
I wrote this poem in honor of Pennsauken Police Department, a special recognition to Sergeant Solzbach. It's called Hail to the Heroes. To answer the call, it takes a very special breed. Fruit should be judged by the basket, not just by one seed. In times of trouble and in times of great danger, they answer the call of a complete stranger. Many have sacrificed and laid down their lives, leaving behind their children, their husbands, or their wives. Man is not perfect, and in this world will never be. There is good and bad in all, including you and me. They have taken on a profession that many would not dare, and arrived at some locations most could not bear. During a storm, many would choose to run away, but until the dust settles, we count on them to stay. Never sure what might be lurking behind any given door, perhaps just a simple dispute or something much more. At times, in a second, there's a decision to make, with the life on the line, even their own at stake. No matter when trouble decides to rear its ugly head, they look it directly in the eye, while most are sleeping in bed. And when the situation is under their control, peace is restored, and once again off they roll. Trouble never remains in one place, it tends to roam around, yet not far behind it can be a frightening sound. A siren at a distance, but closing in fast, bringing along with it those who are up to the task. So let us take a moment and think of all they do to make the streets safer for you, me, and you. They put their best foot forward, no crowd around to cheer, working alone or side by side, no time to entertain fear. After all is said and done, there's one thing that holds true. They are the quiet heroes, the men and women in blue.